Welcome back, dear viewers, to this fresh and fascinating journey into the world of cooking. Today we're not just in the company of one, but two extraordinary families. To start, let's introduce the vivid Jane Fitzcostelia, a distinguished baker and food critic who will be our beacon through this tantalizing recipe. Next, we're introduced to the lively DD family. Their matriarch, Miss Belle Pum, has a passion for baking and is known for passing down her culinary expertise to her sister Hauve, also known as Bowie, for her signature pink bow. Despite being a novice, Hauve radiates with potential. She's round as a ball and made of candy floss. Her children, Pole, the male polar bear, Nuddles, the female golden bear, and Zoe, a round candy floss girl with short yellow pigtails, are our enthusiastic little assistants, ever eager to lend a paw or a spoon in the kitchen. Then let's not forget their charming pets, Husks the dog, Mee the cat, and Swanee the swan, who inject their delightful disorder into the concoction. Today, we also have a couple of unusual guests. Little Meenor, Hauve's arch-nemesis who has a grudge against Big Meenor, is here to infuse some competitive spice to our baking. And then there's Bert, Pole's best friend. Despite being made of candy floss and having a notorious sweet tooth, he to leave some cake for the rest of us. So strap in, viewers, as we set sail on this culinary voyage with our delightful cast. Will we soar to the occasion, or will we collapse under the weight? Stay tuned to discover. Imagine biting into a soft, fluffy sponge, delicately infused with the refreshing taste of peppermint, complemented by pockets of creamy white chocolate. This is the dreamy experience offered by our peppermint and white chocolate sponge cake. Conceived by none other than culinary maestros Mary Berry and Prue Leith, this recipe is a perfect harmony of flavours and textures, each bite a testament to their expertise. Ready to create this indulgent treat? Let's dive into the recipe. Begin by setting the stage for your baking masterpiece. The first step is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius. While that's warming up, take two 8-inch round cake pans and grease them up generously. Don't forget to line them with parchment paper for an easy release later. Now, let's turn to the ingredients. It's crucial that all your ingredients are at room temperature. This ensures optimal blending and gives you a smoother, more consistent batter. So pull out that butter, milk and eggs from the fridge and let them warm up a bit. While you're waiting, why not prepare your dry ingredients? Sift the self-raising flour and baking powder together, ensuring a well-mixed and lump-free mixture. And of course, let's not forget our stars, peppermint extract for that refreshing kick, and finely chopped white chocolate for a touch of creamy indulgence. With the preparation complete, it's time to make the sponge. Now, as our sponge is coming together, let's venture off the beaten path and explore a humorous side of cooking. We all have our fair share of amusing kitchen tales, don't we? Well, here's one that's sure to stick in your memory. Picture this, a glorious sunny day and our dear Miss Belle Pum, a comrade in baking, deciding to experiment a somewhat unconventional concoction. She had this peculiar idea that involved raw chicken, mud and baked egg whites. I can hear your gasps. It sounds like a recipe for catastrophe, and believe me, it was. In the midst of her culinary adventure, she saw her crush, Sir Boblington, trying to hail a whimsical unicycle in the narrow lane. Overwhelmed, ran out barefoot to persuade to try her peculiar mix, forgetting that her pants were loosely tied. You can imagine what transpired next. As she sprinted towards Sir Boblington, her pants decided to part ways with her, leading to an awkward situation. Sir Boblington, taken aback by the sight of Miss Belle Pum, her apron fluttering and her face as crimson as a juicy tomato, tried to make a run for it, but alas, he was already in her garden. When he tasted the curious mix, his reaction was, to put it mildly, explosive. He vomited so vehemently that it looked like a fountain of vomit, falling back into his mouth and spurting out again. This spectacle continued for a good 5 minutes, while Miss Belle Pum was dialing the fire services. The lesson here, dear viewers, is to stick to the recipe, particularly when it's something as scrumptious as our peppermint and white chocolate sponge. Now, let's return to our baking process, shall we? Creating the perfect sponge is an art, and it all starts with the butter and sugar. This is where we lay the foundation for our peppermint and white chocolate sponge, the top tier of our mini wedding cake. Our first step is to cream together softened, unsalted butter and granulated sugar. Now, Mary Berry's tip here is to take your time. You want to achieve a light and fluffy texture, like a cloud of sweetness. This process can't be rushed. It's this creaming that gives our sponge its delicate crumb. Next, we're going to gradually incorporate large eggs, one at a time, beating well after each addition. It's vital to ensure a smooth incorporation before introducing the next egg. This step might seem simple, but it's these little details that make a world of difference to the texture of our sponge. Once we've created a smooth and creamy mixture, it's time to sift in our dry ingredients. In a separate bowl, we combine self-raising flour and baking powder. Sifting these ingredients together not only removes any lumps but also aerates our flour, making our sponge that much lighter. Now we fold this sifted mixture into our wet ingredients. The key word here is fold. It's all about a gentle touch to keep our sponge light and airy. This is where Prue-Leith's precision comes into play. You want to balance the sweetness without overpowering the refreshing note of peppermint extract that we're about to introduce. With our batter well mixed, it's time to add that extra special touch, finely chopped white chocolate. We fold this in, creating pockets of creamy richness throughout our sponge. Once again, it's all about the gentle touch. Prue-Leith reminds us that folding in the white chocolate gently ensures these pockets of indulgence are spread evenly throughout the sponge. At this stage, our batter should be light, fluffy, and speckled with bits of white chocolate. It's a beautiful sight, isn't it? But we're not done yet. Now we infuse our batter with peppermint extract, folding it in to ensure an even distribution. This is going to give our sponge a refreshing minty note that pairs wonderfully with the richness of the white chocolate. And there you have it. Our batter is ready. It's a delightful blend of sweetness, minty freshness, and creamy richness, all ready to be poured into our prepared pans. We want to ensure a smooth surface, and a little tap on the counter should release any lurking air bubbles. With the batter ready, it's time to bake. We're one step closer to our peppermint and white chocolate sponge, the crowning glory of our mini wedding cake. The aroma of baking sponge will soon fill your kitchen, a tantalizing promise of the deliciousness to come. The oven is preheated and ready. Let's fill it with our peppermint and white chocolate delight. The batter, now infused with a refreshing mintiness and creamy richness, is ready to be poured into the prepared pans. Divide it evenly, ensuring a smooth surface. A little tap on the counter will release any air bubbles, making sure our sponge will be perfectly light and airy. Now it's time to bake. Into the oven they go, for 25 to 30 minutes. How will you know when it's done? It's all in the toothpick test. Insert a toothpick into the center of the sponge. If it comes out clean, your sponge is perfectly baked. Once done, let them cool in the pans for 10 minutes before transferring to a wire rack to cool completely. While the sponge cools, let's create a buttercream that's equally delightful. The perfect companion to our sponge is a creamy, minty buttercream. Now the journey to crafting this delightful buttercream begins with our star ingredient, white chocolate. Melt the chocolate gently until it's smooth and velvety. Once melted, let it cool down to room temperature. This step is crucial as we want to avoid a clumpy or separated buttercream. While the chocolate is cooling, it's time to turn our attention to the butter. Using softened butter is key here, as it will whip up into a light, airy cream. Beat the butter until it's creamy and almost white in colour. This might take a few minutes, but it's worth every second. Next, we're going to gradually incorporate the powdered sugar. This should be done slowly, adding a bit at a time and making sure each addition is fully incorporated before adding the next. This ensures our buttercream is smooth and not grainy. Now, it's time to bring back our cooled white chocolate. With the mixer on low, slowly pour in the melted chocolate. You'll see the buttercream start to take on a beautiful creamy texture. But we're not done yet. To bring a refreshing touch to our buttercream, we'll add a dash of peppermint extract. This will give our buttercream a delightful minty twist, perfect for pairing with our white chocolate sponge. Last but not least, we'll add a touch of whimsy with some red food colouring. Add as much or as little as you like, depending on the hue you're aiming for. Remember, a little goes a long way, so start with a small amount and add more if needed. And there you have it. A creamy, minty and vibrant buttercream that's ready to be slathered between our cake layers, creating a perfect harmony of flavours and textures. With the buttercream ready, it's time to assemble our cake. Now comes the fun part, bringing together our sponge and buttercream to create a stunning dessert. Let's start by placing our first layer of peppermint and white chocolate sponge on a serving plate. take a moment to appreciate the light, airy texture we've achieved thanks to Mary Berry's expert touch. Now, let's generously spread our red peppermint buttercream over this layer. Remember, the balance of flavours is crucial here. The sweetness of the buttercream should not overpower the refreshing peppermint flavour of the sponge. This is where Prue Leith's precision comes into play. Once you've got an even layer of buttercream, place the second sponge layer atop. Repeat the buttercream spreading process for this layer as well. As you do this, imagine the delightful contrast of textures your guests will experience. The delicate crumb of the sponge, the smoothness of the buttercream, and the surprise crunch of the peppermint pieces. But we're not done yet. Let's add another dimension of flavour with our mint sauce filling. This cooling, tangy filling will cut through the sweetness of the cake, providing a refreshing palate cleanser. Spread this between your buttercream layers and watch as the cake transforms before your eyes. And there you have it, a peppermint and white chocolate sponge cake that's as beautiful as it is delicious. Each slice is a celebration of textures and flavours, a testament to the power of precision and expertise in baking. Picture this, folks. It's a sunny afternoon and Miss Belle Pum, our adventurous cook, decides to invite her elderly neighbour, Mrs. Higginbotham, for a cup of tea and a slice of her newly invented surprise sponge cake. Little did Mrs. Higginbotham know, the surprise ingredient in the cake was not your typical vanilla or lemon zest, but a rather exotic one, durian, the king of fruits known for its pungent smell. As Mrs. Higginbotham takes her first bite, her eyes widen in surprise and she coughs out a cloud of crumbs. "Oh my!" she exclaims, "what is this unique flavour?" Miss Belle Pum, who is not one to reveal her secret ingredients easily, just winks and says, "A little something from the East." Now, unbeknownst to Miss Belle Pum, Mrs. Higginbotham had a rather sensitive palate and stomach. The strong, unusual flavour of the durian soon proves too much for her. Amidst shocked gasps and frantic scurrying, Mrs. Higginbotham rushes towards the pool area, where a group of unsuspecting sunbathers are lounging. What happens next could best be described as a scene straight out of a slapstick comedy movie. Mrs. Higginbotham's stomach rebels, and the pool area quickly becomes a disaster zone, with everyone getting an unexpected shower. There's a moment of stunned silence before the area erupts into chaos. Sunbathers scramble, towels are flung, and amidst the pandemonium, you can hear Miss Belle Pum's distinctive chuckle. "Well," she says, wiping a tear from her eye, "I did say it was a surprise." As we return to the calm of our kitchen, let's remember that when it comes to baking, surprises are best when they're sweet, not pungent. Now let's move on to recapping the steps of our peppermint and white chocolate sponge cake. Let's take a look back at this tale's key moments and surprising twists. All began with Miss Belle Pum extending an invitation to a suspicious old lady for tea, a seemingly innocent gesture. The old lady, recognising Miss Belle Pum, was initially hesitant but was eventually coaxed into the living quarters. Punctuated by an unfortunate mix-up with a slice of cake, this tale takes a fascinating Miss Belle Pum, in an unusual turn of events, gathered 6 expectant mothers. Unaware of the impending chaos, she had them comfortably seated in sun-decked chairs with strategically placed holes, conveniently positioned below. The natural process unfolded as the women chatted, their waters breaking into the bowl below. This special ingredient, unbeknownst to all, made its way into the cake. As the old lady tasted the cake, her complexion changed drastically. The sight of her vomiting into a waterfall machine caused great commotion among the 36 bystanders. Drenched in, they searched for Miss Belle Pum, but she cleverly made her escape before the pandemonium ensued. Thank you for being part of this jaw-dropping tale. Enjoy retelling and reimagining the astounding story of the peppermint and white chocolate sponge cake.